I heard the chainsaw roar to life like some iron beast tearing through my heart the second I burst out of my cabin, still barefoot, coffee splashing down my shirt. There she was, blonde bob, mirrored sunglasses, expensive walking shoes, directing two hired men to cut down the only bridge connecting my land to the outside world. Sawdust flew like shrapnel, each plank crashing into the river below, as if I was watching pieces of my own family history get gunned down in broad daylight. I yelled for them to stop, but her laugh, sharp as broken glass, cut right through the engine's howl. "We have the right to block access to disputed property," she called, acting like she was starring in her own courtroom drama. Thing is, she wasn't ready for what happened when I came back out carrying an M60 machine gun, heavy as regret, slung across my shoulder, standing guard at the bridge entrance. "Are you sure you want to keep going?" I asked, and her silence was the first honest sound I'd heard all morning. "But let me back up a sec, show you how I got tangled in this circus. My name's Jack Coburn. I'm what you'd call a fixer, or maybe just an old-school stubborn fool, 45 years making things run that other people gave up on. I spent 15 years stacking every greasy dollar from my mechanic shop, living off ramen, driving a Ford held together by rust and prayer, all so one day I could buy a piece of peace for myself. That's how I ended up with Martin Cabin, named after my granddad, who taught me a man's only worth the things he builds and protects, not the noise he makes about them. The cabin was nothing special. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a fireplace big enough to heat the whole county if you kept it stoked. But it sat on 3 acres of riverfront land, and the only way in or out was a bridge Henderson, the old owner, had built himself back in '87. I carved my grandfather's name into the middle plank, not for nostalgia, but as a reminder that some things are worth the fight. My daily routine was simple. Coffee on the porch, listening to the river talk to the rocks, working on engines when folks around here needed the kind of help you can't find on YouTube. I even picked up a weird hobby, collecting movie props from old war films, mostly decommissioned gear that I kept in working order out of pure habit. My prize, an honest-to-God M60, with paperwork stacked higher than the engine blocks in my shop. For a while, that was enough. Peace, quiet, good neighbors like Dave Patterson and his daughter Sarah, who'd stop by with her little boy on weekends. Real people. But you ever notice how some folks can't stand to see somebody else enjoying something they can't control? Enter Patricia Whitmore, president of the Riverside Hills Homeowners Association, rolling up in a white BMW that probably cost more than my entire property. She didn't even bother crossing the bridge, just yelled across with that corporate power smile. "We need to inspect your property for compliance." I told her straight. "No HOA here. I bought this place clean, free, and clear." She just smiled tighter, handed me a thick envelope, and said I had 30 days to prove I wasn't under their thumb. "We work closely with Sheriff Johnson," she added, like she was warning me about a hurricane instead of a badge. That envelope sat on my table for days, pulsing like a venomous snake. When I finally opened it, it was full of violations, unauthorized construction, environmental impact, failure to obtain approval, all backed by codes, bylaws, even county ordinances that read like they'd been invented last week just to trip me up. I tore through every deed, every scrap of paper Henderson had left me. My cabin predated their HOA by 15 years, but somehow, some stamp or signature was missing. When you spend your life fixing engines, you learn to spot missing pieces. But this was bureaucracy built to crush a man. I shelled out half a month's wages for a lawyer named Thomas Mitchell, who looked at my documents like a doctor reading a grim X-ray. He said fighting the HOA would run me up to 75 grand, with no guarantee I'd win. "They're buying up everything along the river," he whispered. "You're in the way of a boutique resort project." Suddenly, all the pressure made sense. Later, Dave Patterson showed up with beer and a folder full of old photographs, time-stamped, clear as day, showing my cabin and a dozen others long before Patricia's crowd had even dreamed up their rules. "She's done this to 6 other families," Dave said, voice heavy. "Sheriff always takes her side. My own daughter Sarah lost her place to the same game. They disconnected her utilities, hit her with violations until she gave up." Armed with photos, I marched into the HOA office, some old bank building Patricia had claimed. She took one look at my evidence and handed it back like a teacher failing a student for bad penmanship. "We need legal documentation not vacation snapshots, she said, cold as January. She scheduled a comprehensive property assessment and warned me that blocking her would bring the sheriff down on my head. The next week was a siege. Orange barriers went up around my bridge. Utilities disconnected due to disputed authorization. Even my well pump got flagged as illegal. Patricia kept showing up. Noise meters when I ran my generator, air quality testers when I burned wood, always taking photos, always smiling that reptile smile. She made harassment an Olympic sport, documenting everything for court, or YouTube, or maybe both. Then Dave dropped a bomb. Sarah had dug through records and found Patricia's HOA wasn't just a petty club, it was a front for a big real estate firm. They weren't just enforcing rules, they were systematically squeezing families off their land for a multi-million-dollar resort. My place was the keystone. Patricia made her big move one Friday, bullhorn in hand, cameras rolling, announcing structural safety testing that would end with my bridge in pieces if it failed. Meaning, if she wanted it gone, it was gone. She brought a crowd, officials, witnesses, a couple guys with chainsaws looking to make quick work of my history. When they started cutting, I snapped, ran out shouting, but Patricia just blasted back, step away or face legal consequences. Her goon live-streamed it, making me look like the aggressor, turning my fight for home into her proof that I was dangerous. But here's the thing about bullies, they never expect a real fight. I went back in, grabbed the M60, and walked out slow. The bridge went dead quiet. Even the chainsaw guy froze, eyes wide. "You got 10 seconds to get off my property," I said, not yelling, just steady, because I wasn't bluffing. Patricia sputtered threats about calling the cops, but the color had drained from her face. I dropped a cartridge at her feet. "Just in case you think this is theoretical," I told her. Her crew scattered. Chainsaws left running in the dirt, phone abandoned in the water. Patricia, still trying to sound in charge, backed away, shaking. "This isn't over," she shouted, but she was already in her BMW, driving off faster than I'd ever seen her move. 2 hours later, she was back, with a documentary crew. This time, she wanted to spin it her way for the media. Cameras, sound gear, a whole circus, trying to make me look like a madman. What she didn't expect, that the sight of a real, legal M60 would send her journalists packing. Nobody wanted to film a firefight. Patricia was left alone, shouting about witness intimidation and dangerous homeowners, but her own team voted with their feet. I fired 2 rounds into the sky, just to make sure they all got the message. Echoes bouncing off the water, thunder rolling back. Patricia's mask slipped for good. She lost it, wet herself, stumbled into a surveyor's stake, yelping loud enough for everyone to hear. The last cameraman dropped his gear and ran. Finally, Dave and Sarah came running over, faces lit up like they'd just watched their side win a war. "We found it," Sarah said, dumping a folder of records onto my busted bridge. Turned out, Patricia's HOA was never legally registered. All her authority? Forged. The county had no record. Her corporation was just a front, 40-plus families defrauded out of their land. With the evidence in hand, I called the county clerk. By sunset, the prosecutor's office was involved, fraud investigation opened, every property seizure under review. Patricia tried to hit back. Her lawyer called, threatening me with charges. I just laughed. "I'll see you in court," I said, "with my lawyer, my evidence, and my constitutional rights." Then I got to work with Dave and Sarah, rebuilding the bridge, carving my granddad's name deeper than before, this time for everyone who'd ever been bullied out of what was theirs. As the sun dipped behind the trees and my new bridge stood strong, the M60 went back on the wall, just above a plaque. For when conversation isn't sufficient. The fight was over, but the story wasn't. Patricia's face would haunt a dozen courtrooms before this was done, her evidence, now ironclad proof of her own crimes. And I was left with a rebuilt bridge, new friends, and a simple message for anyone watching. What would you do if somebody tried to erase your family's history with a chainsaw and a stack of fake papers? Ever been bullied by somebody hiding behind a badge or a bylaw? Share your thoughts below. Let's hear what justice means to you. Because some fights you don't win by being reasonable. You win them by standing your ground and making sure the world sees what really matters when the paperwork burns.